The survey ship Endeavor's Hope dropped out of hyperspace with a shudder that rattled coffee cups across the bridge. Captain Jake Morrison grabbed the armrest of his chair, frowning at the sudden emergency exit from their route. They were supposed to be 3 systems away, mapping asteroid fields for mining opportunities. Instead, his navigation system had dragged them to the middle of nowhere, near some frozen moon he'd never heard of. Someone better have a good explanation for this, Jake muttered, pulling up the sensor data on his screen. The readings looked weird. Really weird. Amy Rodriguez hunched over her science station, her fingers dancing across the controls. She'd been with Jake's crew for 2 years now, and he'd learned to trust her instincts. When Amy looked confused, something interesting was happening. When she looked excited, something impossible was happening. Right now she looked both. "Captain, you need to see this," Amy said, her voice tight with barely contained excitement. Jake walked over to her station, leaning over her shoulder to get a better look at the thermal imaging. "What am I looking at, Amy?" She zoomed in on the display, enhancing the resolution. "Biological signatures, Captain. Big ones. And seismic activity that doesn't match any geological patterns I've ever seen. It's like the moon itself is crying out." Tyler Banks, their pilot, spun his chair around. He was young, barely 25, but he could fly through an asteroid storm with his eyes closed. "You're saying something alive down there pulled us out of hyperspace?" "Not pulled," Amy corrected. "More like, screamed so loud our sensors couldn't ignore it." Jake studied the readings for another moment, then made his decision. "Take us down, Tyler. Let's see what we've got." The ship descended through layers of frozen atmosphere. Ice crystals pinged against the hull like tiny bells. Through the main view screen, the moon's surface came into focus. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way. Endless plains of blue-white ice stretched to the horizon, broken only by jagged mountain ranges and deep valleys. 2 small suns hung in the purple sky, casting long shadows across the frozen landscape. "There," Ben Carter called out from the xenobiology station. He was pointing at the screen, his other hand already running analysis programs. 2 o'clock, about 3 kilometers out. Tyler adjusted their course, bringing the ship lower. As they cleared a ridge of ice formations, the crew got their first clear look at what had called them here. 2 massive creatures stood on the ice plains below. They were enormous, nearly 15 meters tall, with thick bodies covered in fur that seemed to shimmer and glow. The fur caught the pale moonlight and reflected it back in rainbow patterns, like someone had covered them in living crystals. They looked like the ancient mammoths from Earth's history books, but bigger, stranger, and definitely not from any world humans had discovered. "Holy," Tyler whispered, his hands frozen on the controls. "Language," Jake said automatically, but his eyes never left the creatures. They were magnificent, alien, and clearly in terrible distress. The larger of the 2 creatures was pacing back and forth, her massive head swinging from side to side. Even from the ship, they could see her agitation. The smaller one, maybe half her size, was nowhere in sight at first. Then Amy adjusted the thermal scan and they saw it. "Captain, the smaller one is in trouble," Ben said, his voice suddenly urgent. "It's fallen into some kind of crevasse. Deep one too." The view screen shifted, showing them a better angle. The juvenile creature was wedged deep between walls of ice, trapped in a crack in the moon's surface. Its desperate cries echoed across the frozen wasteland, a sound so heartbreaking that it made the crew's chest hurt just hearing it. Above, the massive mother stopped pacing and threw her head back, releasing a bellowing call that actually vibrated through the ship's hull. Jake felt the floor shake beneath his feet. "Tell me that's not what I think it is." Amy checked her readings. "She's generating some kind of bioelectric field. It's interacting with our ship's systems. Captain, if she gets any more agitated, she could fry half our equipment." Through the screen, they watched the mother approach the edge of the crevasse, trying desperately to reach her child. But the gap was too narrow for her massive body, and every time she got close, more ice crumbled away, making things worse. The calves' cries grew weaker, more desperate. Jake's jaw tightened as he watched the scene unfold. "How bad is it, Ben?" Ben ran his scans and his face went pale. "The calf is weakening fast. Core temperature dropping. Stress levels through the roof. If we don't do something soon." He trailed off, but everyone understood. They were watching something die. The bridge fell completely silent except for the hum of ship systems and those haunting cries from below. Every member of the crew stood frozen, watching the mother's anguish play out on the ice. It didn't matter that she was an alien from a species they'd never seen before. Pain was universal. A mother's love was universal. And right now they were watching both in their rawest form. Jake stared at the screen, his mind already racing through options, regulations, and consequences. But all he could really see was that mother, pacing and crying for her child, completely helpless to save it. Amy pulled up the scan results on the main display, and the numbers made everyone's stomach drop. Captain, that crevasse is 47 meters deep. That's deeper than a 15-story building. She tapped through more data, her expression getting grimmer with each screen. The calf weighs at least 8,000 kilograms. That's heavier than our entire shuttle. And the ice structure is completely unstable. One wrong move and the whole thing collapses. What about those heat signatures? Jake asked, pointing at the orange patches on the scan. Thermal vents, Amy confirmed. Active ones. The temperature at the bottom is hot enough to melt rock. If that calf slides down any further. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Jake rubbed his face, thinking fast. They'd dealt with difficult rescues before, but nothing like this. Time estimate for standard rescue protocols. Ben pulled up the official procedures on his screen, scrolling through the requirements. 3 days minimum, Captain. We'd need to requisition heavy equipment from the nearest station. Specialized lifting gear, ice stabilizers, a proper medical team for unknown species. The paperwork alone would take half a day. 3 days, Jake repeated, looking back at the view screen. The calf's movements were already getting slower, weaker. That calf doesn't have 3 days. It probably doesn't have 3 hours. And neither does that mother, Amy added, highlighting the bioelectric readings. Look at her patterns. She's getting more agitated by the minute. Those electrical pulses are already interfering with our communications array. If she decides we're a threat instead of help, she could fry every system on this ship. Tyler leaned forward in his pilot's seat, studying the mother's movements. She's smart too. Watch how she's testing the ice around the crevasse. She knows the situation is bad. She just can't fix it. That made it worse somehow. They weren't just watching an animal in distress. They were watching an intelligent being experience the worst moment of her life, completely helpless to save her own child. Mike Davidson had been quiet up until now, sitting at his engineering station and running calculations. He was the kind of guy who fixed problems, not talked about them. Now he stood up, rolling up his sleeves. Captain, we have mining drones in cargo bay too. They're designed to lift or containers. We've also got cargo netting rated for 8 tons, and we've got enough cable to reach that depth, maybe even deeper if we splice them together. Everyone turned to look at him. Those aren't rated for this kind of operation, Tyler pointed out, always the practical one. Mining drones are meant for controlled environments, not precision rescue work on unstable ice. Mike nodded, accepting the criticism. No, they're not rated for this. Not even close. But they're what we've got, and they're here right now. That has to count for something. Jake looked around his bridge, meeting each crew member's eyes. This was the moment. The decision that would define them. Council protocols say we can't interfere with pre-contact species. These creatures are clearly intelligent, but they haven't developed space travel. We haven't established formal communication. By the book, we're supposed to observe and report, nothing more. The weight of those words settled over the bridge like a heavy blanket. Everyone knew what that meant. Breaking first contact protocols could mean court-martial. Dishonorable discharge. The end of their careers. Everything they'd worked for gone. This could mean our careers, Jake continued. All of us. They'll want someone to blame, and we'll be right there in the crosshairs. Rachel Hayes, their medical officer, had been watching from her station near the back of the bridge. She was usually quiet during command decisions, focused on her own domain of keeping the crew healthy. But now she spoke up, her voice soft but clear in the silent bridge. That's a child down there, Captain. Everyone looked at her. She stood up, moving closer to the view screen, watching the mother's desperate attempts to reach her calf. I don't care what species it is or what planet it's from. That's a child, and its mother is watching it die. We have the tools. We have the knowledge. We have the chance to help. She turned to face Jake directly. I didn't sign up for Starfleet to watch children die because of paperwork. Jake felt something shift in his chest. Rachel was right. They all knew it. Sometimes the rules mattered less than doing what was right. He straightened up, and his command voice came back full force. All hands, prepare for emergency rescue operations. This is not a drill. Mike, start putting together whatever you can. I want options in 10 minutes. Amy, I need you to figure out how to keep Mama calm. Use every trick in the book. Music, light patterns, whatever might work. Tyler, I need you ready for precision flying. The kind that breaks regulations and physics in equal measure. Tyler grinned, his hands already moving over the controls. My favorite kind, Captain. Ben, Rachel, prep the medical bay for unknown biology. If we get that calf out, it's probably going to need help. Jake looked at each of them one more time. Everyone understand? We're doing this. We're breaking the rules, risking everything, and we're doing it anyway. The crew responded with immediate action. No hesitation. No second thoughts. They were all in. Because that's what humans did. They saw someone who needed help and they helped. Simple as that. Mike Davidson checked his climbing harness one last time before stepping off the ship's cargo ramp. The cold hit him like a punch to the face even through his thermal suit. His breath immediately formed thick clouds in the frozen air, and he could feel ice crystals forming on his eyebrows within seconds. "Comms check," he said, tapping his earpiece. "We've got you, Mike," Kate Palmer's voice crackled through. She'd taken over coordination duties while Jake monitored the overall situation. "Descent line is secured. Take it slow." Mike looked down into the crevasse. It was like staring into the throat of some frozen beast, dark and terrifying. Somewhere down there, a scared child was dying. Didn't matter that the child weighed 4 tons and had crystalline fur. Fear was fear. Pain was pain. The makeshift translator device bounced against his hip as he began his descent. Amy had spent the last hour programming it with every calming sound pattern in their database. Whale songs from Earth. Purring frequencies from Andronian cats. Even some lullabies that supposedly worked across species. Mike had no idea if any of it would help, but it was better than silence. The walls of ice pressed in around him as he descended deeper. His headlamp cut through the darkness, revealing strange patterns in the ice. It was beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Every few meters, he'd hear a crack and his heart would jump into his throat. 20 meters down, he reported, his voice steady despite his racing pulse. "Ice is holding. I can hear the calf now." The sounds grew louder as he descended. Weak cries that reminded him of his neighbor's dog back on Earth when it got scared during thunderstorms. That same desperate, exhausted quality. The translator on his belt started emitting soft, rhythmic tones in response. "Okay, big guy," Mike said softly as the calf came into view below him. "I know you're scared. So am I. But we're going to fix this. I promise." The creature's eyes turned toward him and Mike's breath caught. They were massive, easily the size of dinner plates, and golden like honey in sunlight. Intelligence shone in those eyes. Recognition. Oh. The calf thrashed weakly when Mike got closer, but it was clearly too exhausted for real panic. Good. That would make this easier. Above, Kate coordinated the crew with the precision of a surgeon. "Tyler, I need you holding position at exactly 42 meters. Not 41, not 43. 42. Ben, monitor those vital signs. If they spike even a little, we pull Mike out immediately." Tyler's voice came through steady, though everyone could hear the strain. "Holding steady. The thermal updrafts are murder, Kate. This is insane." "Yeah," Kate agreed, watching her screens. "Insanely human." Down in the crevasse, Mike had reached the calf. Up close, it was even more impressive. The crystalline fur sparkled even in his headlamp's light, each strand like fiber optic cable carrying light through it. He could see the calf's chest heaving with effort, steam rising from its breath. "Hey there, buddy. My name's Mike. I'm here to help." He kept talking as he unpacked the cargo netting, his hands working on autopilot. "Your mom's up there waiting for you. She's really worried. We're going to get you back to her." The calf made a soft sound, almost questioning. The translator on Mike's belt responded with more calming tones. Mike worked the netting around the calf's torso, moving carefully to avoid the creature's weak thrashing. It was like trying to wrap a net around a bus-sized baby that could accidentally crush you without meaning to. Every movement had to be precise. The calf seemed to understand he was trying to help, though, because it gradually stopped struggling. "That's it. Good. We're going to get you out. Your mom's waiting. Just hang on." Mike secured one attachment point, then another, talking continuously. His hands were steady even though his heart was hammering. "You're being so brave. Just a little longer." "Mike, we're ready to lift," Kate called down. "On your mark." Mike checked the last attachment point twice, then 3 times. This had to hold. Had to. Now. The ship's engines whined with effort, a sound that echoed through the crevasse like a mechanical scream. Tyler was pushing the ship beyond its normal limits. The cables went taut, creaking under the massive weight. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then the calf rose 1 meter. Then 2. "Ice stability at 60%, Amy warned from her station. "It's crumbling faster than predicted." "Keep going," Jake ordered, his voice tight. We're committed now. The calf climbed slowly through the crevasse, meter by agonizing meter. Mike ascended alongside it, keeping one hand on the netting, ready to adjust if anything shifted. Chunks of ice broke away and tumbled into the thermal vents below, hissing as they hit the superheated water. On the surface, the mother had stopped pacing. She stood at the edge of the crevasse, her massive head tilted down, watching. Her bioelectric pulses were growing stronger, making the ship's lights flicker. "Captain, her electrical output is spiking," Amy reported, her voice rising with concern. "She could disable us any second. Our systems won't survive another surge." Jake gripped his armrest. "Can we shield against it?" "Not at this range. If she decides we're hurting her calf." Then something remarkable happened. Something that would be analyzed and debated by scientists for years to come. The mother's chaotic electrical pulses suddenly changed. They synchronized with the ship's power rhythm, matching it frequency by frequency. Instead of disrupting their systems, she was stabilizing them, strengthening them. "She's helping us," Amy whispered in amazement, staring at her readings. "She understands what we're doing. She's actively helping." 3 hours had passed since Mike descended into that frozen hell. 3 hours of holding their breath, watching sensors, and praying to whatever gods might be listening. Now finally the calf's head broke through the top of the crevasse. The crew erupted in cheers over the comms, but they went silent almost immediately. This wasn't over yet. The calf collapsed onto the ice the moment it was free, its massive body hitting the surface with a thud that shook the ground. Its chest heaved with desperate breaths, sides moving in and out like giant bellows. Steam rose from its body in thick clouds. It was alive though. Against all odds, they'd actually pulled it off. Mike unclipped from his harness with shaking hands. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, and he could feel every muscle in his body screaming at him. But he couldn't rest yet. Not now. The mother was approaching. Fast. She moved across the ice with a speed that seemed impossible for something so massive. Each step made the ground tremble. She was easily 20 tons of muscle, bone, and protective instinct, and her eyes were locked on her calf. Mike stood up and positioned himself between the exhausted calf and the approaching mother. He didn't move aside. Didn't run. Just stood there, small and fragile in his thermal suit. "Mike, get back to the ship." Jake's voice crackled urgently over the comm. "Get back right now." "Negative, Captain." Mike's voice was steady, even though his legs felt like jelly. He slowly raised his arms, palms out, in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "She needs to know we're not a threat. She needs to see a face, not a machine." Tyler was already moving the ship into position for emergency extraction. "Mike, buddy, she could step on you without even noticing." "I know," Mike said quietly. "But she won't." The mother stopped 3 meters away. Up close she was absolutely enormous. Her shadow covered Mike completely. Those golden eyes stared down at him, and he could see his own reflection in them. She was studying him, trying to understand what this tiny creature had done for her child. Her trunk-like appendage extended slowly toward Mike. It was thick as a tree trunk, powerful enough to snap him in half without effort. The crew on the ship watched, frozen. Kate had her hand over her mouth. Tyler's finger hovered over the emergency beam-out button. Ben was holding his breath so hard his face was turning red. Mike stood perfectly still. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to dive aside, to do something. But he fought those instincts and kept his hand extended, palm up. Waiting. The appendage touched his outstretched hand. It was warm. That was Mike's first thought. Despite the freezing temperatures, despite the ice all around them, her touch was warm. Gentle too. She barely applied any pressure, just made contact as if she understood how fragile he was. For a long moment, human and alien regarded each other. Mike looked into those massive golden eyes and saw understanding. Gratitude. Recognition of what he'd risked for a child that wasn't even his species. Then the mother moved past him, surprisingly graceful for her size. She went straight to her calf, her trunk moving over its body, checking for injuries, offering comfort. The calf made soft sounds, nuzzling against its mother. The reunion was so clearly loving, so obviously tender, that several crew members found themselves wiping their eyes. Jake let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His hands were gripping the armrests so hard his knuckles were white. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. He actually did it. Rachel had already grabbed her medical kit and was heading for the airlock. "Captain, requesting permission to check the calf's injuries. It took some damage during the extraction." Jake watched the mother on the view screen, still assessing risks. "Go ahead, but slow movements. Ben, you're with her." Keep your distance until we're sure it's safe. Rachel and Ben made their way across the ice, their movements careful and deliberate. The mother watched them approach, her body tense, but she didn't move to stop them. When Rachel knelt down near the calf and started scanning it with her medical equipment, the mother actually shifted slightly, giving her better access. She understands, Ben said softly, his voice filled with wonder. She knows we're trying to help. Rachel worked quickly, treating minor cuts and checking the calf's core temperature. Hypothermia, some bruising but nothing serious. This kid's tough. That's when Amy's console lit up like a Christmas tree. Her eyes went wide. Captain, I'm picking up more of them. Lots more. There's a whole herd approaching our position. Jake felt his stomach drop. How many? 20, 30? Amy kept counting as more signatures appeared on her screen. Still counting, Captain. They're coming from all directions. The ground started to shake. Not from instability this time, but from footsteps. Dozens of footsteps. Over the horizon they appeared. Massive shapes moving across the ice plains, crystalline fur catching the light like a wave of living stars. Young ones, old ones, all sizes. An entire herd, drawn by the mother's earlier distress calls. Jake looked at his crew working beside the alien creatures, at Mike standing there with his hands still extended in friendship, at the mother and calf reunited. This had stopped being a rescue operation. This was first contact. Real, honest-to-God first contact. I guess we're making first contact, Jake said, a smile creeping onto his face despite the situation. Everyone stay calm and follow the mother's lead. No sudden movements. Let them come to us. Tyler laughed nervously. So, this is probably above our pay grade, right, Captain? Way above, Jake agreed. But we're doing it anyway. The Endeavor's hope remained in orbit around Verlith 7 for 2 weeks. What started as an emergency rescue turned into something much bigger. The crew set up a temporary camp on the ice plains, close enough to monitor the calves' recovery but far enough to give the herd space. Ben and Amy worked around the clock to establish real communication with the creatures. The Valorum, as they called themselves in their own language. It wasn't easy. Their communication involved a mix of sounds, bioelectric pulses, and body language that human technology had never encountered before. But humans were stubborn. They always had been. By day 3 they managed simple exchanges. Yes, no, safe, danger. By day 7 they were having actual conversations. And what they learned changed everything. The Valorum possessed intelligence that rivaled humanity's. They had culture, art, and history. Their memories stretched back thousands of years, passed down through generations in ways humans were only beginning to understand. They'd watched the stars for centuries wondering if anyone else was out there. And now they knew. On the 10th day, Jake received an invitation from the herd's matriarch. The old female who led the entire group wanted to speak with him directly. He walked across the ice plains alone, feeling smaller with every step. When he reached her, she towered above him like a living mountain. Through the translation device, her voice came through deep and resonant. We watched your kind before. Many kinds watch. Jake's heart skipped. You've seen other species? Other ships. Many times. They come. They observe. They calculate risk. They follow rules. They leave. The matriarch's golden eyes fixed on Jake. Only humans break rules for life. Jake felt the weight of those words. Other species had seen the Valorum in distress before and done nothing. They'd followed their protocols, their regulations, their careful calculations of risk versus reward. Only humans had said, to hell with the rules, and helped anyway. We couldn't just leave your people to suffer, Jake said simply. It wouldn't have been right. The matriarch's trunk reached out and gently touched his shoulder. This we understand now. This we remember. This we will tell all who listen. 6 months later, Jake stood in a very different place. The Galactic Council chambers were massive, designed to accommodate hundreds of different species. Representatives from across the known galaxy filled the seats, their forms ranging from barely humanoid to completely alien. Most of them were staring at Jake with suspicion, curiosity, or outright hostility. The charges against him and his crew were serious. Violation of first contact protocols. Unauthorized interference with pre-contact species. Potential contamination of developing cultures. Each charge carried penalties ranging from career termination to actual prison time. The council administrator, a tall being with too many limbs and a voice like grinding stones, read the charges aloud. Captain Jake Morrison and the crew of Endeavor's Hope stand accused of gross violations of Protocol 7, subsection 12. How do you plead? Jake stood straight, his dress uniform crisp and clean. We helped save a child's life, sir. I don't regret that for a second, regardless of protocols. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species shouted their approval. Others demanded harsh punishment. The administrator was calling for order when the main doors opened. The Valorum delegation entered. The matriarch had to duck to fit through the doorway, even though it was designed for large species. Her presence dominated the vast hall. Behind her came others of her kind, including the mother and the calf they'd saved. The calf was bigger now, healthier, and walked with confidence beside its mother. The entire chamber fell silent. Humanity stands accused of violating non-contact protocols, the council administrator stated, recovering his composure. The matriarch's voice resonated through every translator in the chamber, in hundreds of different languages simultaneously. Humanity stands accused of saving my grandchild. Jake's eyes widened. Grandchild. The calf was her grandchild. Humanity stands accused of choosing life over law, the matriarch continued, her voice growing stronger. We Valorum choose humanity as allies. We choose compassion over protocol. We choose the species that climbed into darkness to save a child not their own. She turned, her gaze sweeping across the entire council. Who else here can say the same? Which of you would have broken your precious rules to help us? The silence was deafening. Then one representative stood. Then another. Species that had stayed neutral began speaking up, reconsidering their stance. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species remained outraged, insisting that protocols existed for good reasons. Others saw what the matriarch was really saying, that maybe some rules were worth breaking. In the end, Jake and his crew were officially reprimanded. A slap on the wrist, really. But the Valorum became humanity's first true allies in the galaxy. Their testimony spread across hundreds of worlds. The story of an engineer descending into a frozen crevasse to save someone else's child became legend. Back on Earth, months after the hearing, Mike sat in his small apartment. He'd returned to a hero's welcome, though he insisted he'd just done his job. His desk held various commendations and awards he'd received, but his eyes kept going to one thing. A photo. Him standing beside the calf on the ice, the mother's trunk resting on his shoulder. Ben had taken it right after the rescue. The image had gone viral across human space and apparently across alien space too. His comm device beeped. A message from Jake, who'd returned to active duty in deep space exploration. They're calling what we did, the Verlith incident. Some call it reckless. Some call it heroic. The Valorum call it the day they learned humanity's true nature. I call it Tuesday. Good work, engineer. The galaxy's a better place because you wouldn't let a child die. Stay safe, Jake. Mike smiled, leaning back in his chair. He thought about that day on the ice. The fear, the cold, the impossible odds. He thought about those golden eyes looking at him with hope. He thought about the mother's grateful touch. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not with weapons, not with threats, not with demonstrations of power. They'd done it with compassion. With an engineer rappelling into darkness because someone needed help. With a crew that chose to do the right thing, even when the right thing could cost them everything. And the galaxy would never forget that. Neither would Mike.